Peace, 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 peace. Make sure I get this mic positioned correctly. It's on. It's at its own, so it's gonna be a little. I don't know. Guess I'm gonna title this "Thoughts While I'm Driving." Something new that I'm starting is like when I'm on my either driving or somewhere with myself. Part of my seclusion. But greetings to all. So if you probably hear the background, it's probably because again I am in the process of driving. And yeah, greetings to all. Peace to all. What's up? What's happening? Let me see. What other lingo? Hi, how you doing? Um, yeah. Just want to make this as relatable as possible. Have you laughed today? Okay, good. If you haven't, find something to laugh about. That'll change your whole trajectory on life, perspective, and so forth. Um, yeah. So thoughts while I'm driving. It's just something that I just kind of want to add to my channel and so forth. It has a lot to do with things that are probably like unspoken that I really don't share, that I really sit with. And this topic on today's episode of Thoughts to Yourself will be more something we can all relate to on all levels, and that's the feeling of belonging. And what I mean by belonging is like a sense of not so much validation, but a sense of security, a sense of being, or acceptance, and being embraced wherever you are, however that looks. Some of us probably never have been embraced. This has been. I was contemplating on even like speaking about this, creating something, but then again, I was like, this is to all those who have been labeled strange, weird, the outcast, the crazy, the obnoxious, the annoying, in an attacking way. This is dedicated to you. You inspire me. I inspire me because I know that feeling. That feeling of like growing up and never really feeling like you belong to your family. You can relate to them, but what I mean by relate, everything ain't got to be relatable when it comes to toxicity or things that just seems like it's always driven off of trauma bonds or gossiping and so forth. Now, don't get me like, look now, like I kiki ha 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 with everybody else and so forth. It's just a growing process of that sense of belonging. Also is a sense of like also like being able to feel like you're relatable or relate to the people around you, your demographics. For instance, I will be perceived or presented as a dark man, melanated man. Some may use the term black. A lot of things I just don't really subscribe to because we're all just different shades. I just learned to grow out of the mindset of survival when I start to look at the bigger picture and the perspective of humanity, and to see how, and what I mean by that is like this has been a inner growth and also changing externally, having uncomfortable conversations with people who very much do not like dark people or people that are darker, living in communities where when I research the history and so forth, that sense of belonging doesn't really feel like I belong there. And this can, some people may not relate to this, but some can, because a lot of us have grew up in environments where it's just predominantly darker people and or lighter people. And the reason I like to talk about this because that sense of belonging has a lot to do with even us feeling like we feel accepted, and we feel like a lot of things that come up that I'm gonna eventually get into, probably a second episode of this, talking about like emotional needs, and a lot of those things have to do with just feeling trust, validation, acceptance. What else? Just a lot of things internally. Because when you talk about emotional, we talk about internal. So going back to even the process of like growing up in a darker neighborhood, someone's perspective may be completely different than being in an environment where, again, from my own experience, which I'm grateful, because I used to feel ashamed or guilt or even like question the creator, the most high, about why am I here? Why am I on this journey? Why am I in this community? Why did I even, come to create a child by someone who, at first when I started speaking to, it wasn't a huge issue when it comes to color, until you realize, like, when you live in a country or an environment that, growing up in different demographics, you don't really see a lot of things that subconsciously have been hidden, and those are fears on both parts, no matter what culture and creed and so forth. So even with that, it's alarming, or it can be very challenging if people aren't at that level of being in a relationship or partnership, or even with themselves, like willing to heal and grow together. So, um, you know, just those things alone with, uh, again, being in communities where you're growing up in a darker community and so forth. And I always give people the polarity of things, like when I'm talking about how me personally growing up in a darker community and being around people that are darker and so forth, and starting to realize, like, a lot of them never even really had like a lot of emotional supportive connections, never really feeling accepted, not just in their country, but in their environment, not only in their environment, by the people that they say they love them the most. So when you talk about being validated by a mother, validation, being accepted by what it is you want to do, how it is you want to live, and so forth, you know, that right there has a lot to do with even feeling safe and secure in being who you are and blossoming and becoming and fulfilling, or even having emotional fulfillment. There's an emphasis on a lot of external things, but the emotional fulfillment is just as important as uh, really focusing on your vision and your dreams, and that fulfilling part of you that feels wholesome and joyful with what you're doing. So I've had the experience growing up of being in environments where, it's people don't want to say it's not a color thing, but when you really look at a country and the environments and the demographics, that's what the foundations have been. As much as people want to ignore it, there hasn't been places where we can say, oh, we felt safe. I didn't realize how unsafe, how is that a word, invalidated, or devalued I was, until I start living in certain communities where, again, I'm so used to being around, growing up, darker people. The consistency of seeing people who really, as you start to become more aware of these things, like, or have some of the most deepest insecurities. And this isn't all coaches and creeds, but from my experience, seeing it through my lens, is that seeing people that I grew up with have some of the most deepest insecurities. And then I also noticed that it's just presented differently from people of other cultures, of other shades. And I was expressing to someone, like, just because someone's smiling in your face doesn't mean they're fond of, like, wanting to accept you, embrace you, and have anything to do with you. And let me go into depth about that, like, from like, I see it no difference. Like, I've learned a lot of history from where I've been and traveling, and I've had people, again, from different shades that help me, different cultures and creeds. So my mindset would be completely different. My perspective on life would be completely different than someone who, let's say, a cousin or someone who just only maybe have been around darker people most of their life. Most of their life. Only been around people who have a survival mindset. Never been around people who, let's say, could have came from wealth, could obtain wealth through whatever it is, through a family, through lineage and so forth, and or been around people who some may perceive as rich or have, be well off. But what I'm getting at is this, is that that's all it is perception. And so I had to learn that people are coming from their perspective or perception of things based on what they've experienced, based off their own experience from childhood to present day. And so, and when I say this, it's just like you can have someone who grew up around mostly darker people. I was telling someone I met the other day that was from Mexico, and it was amazing because he was from Mexico City, and he was telling me just things like how, again, when you're there are people that just look like him. They are not, as it used to be what people don't know, but they're, it's theirs, it's around, but that comes with traveling and experience. It's seeing darker people of that nationality or of that creed. And he was just telling me how, how a lot of people moved there and how things are, it's crowded in certain parts. And even how, like, I was like, well, is there water around Mexico City? He's like, nah, you have to probably drive like 3 to 4 hours just to get to the coast or the beach. I was like, what? Like, nah, that ain't for me then. But I would visit. I would love to visit. Then I was giving him my perspective on like just being dark here in so-called America. And again, even though his reality is not mine, there's something that we can relate to, whether, there's something relatable just by conversation alone, just by even him being where he is or where he was and just now being here in this country. And so these conversations we have, you still can find something that is relatable, because something he don't know, that how they may perceive. I was telling him I don't like calling people Mexican or Hispanic, because some people, they subscribe to different things and we don't know that until, like, there's certain things that, people don't know. They don't use the same terms as they would in another country. And, and it opens your mind and opens your life to realize, like, wow, not everyone that doesn't look like you is against you. And see, from growing up, from my experience, I experienced self-hatred from people that are darker. And I experienced, if you want to call it, like I said, I call it hatred of self-hatred, from people who are racist, that I grew up in a school like that. So just to grow up in a school and the environment like that, that was my perception of people who were lighter. It wasn't always like that, but I had a consistent moving away from, at that moment, like, I had got kicked out of school when in middle school, and then my mom was like, you could go down there with your dad or whatever. And this was from going to North Carolina to Alabama. And I had literally went from a school that, I'm trying to think, was this before? Yeah, I went to a school that wore certain colors and uniforms because of the gangs, because of a lot of things. And this school was predominantly like darker people, like almost 99% almost. And that experience, again, was completely different, because different environment, people talk different. I mean, it was even to where you couldn't even say certain things, to where, or wear even certain colors. Like, it was that, like, now that I reflect on it, it was definitely traumatizing. And again, a lot of bullying, because sometimes when you come from a whole different environment, demographics, you experience a lot of hatred amongst your own peers, amongst people that look like you. This is why I always say it's an internal thing. Other than that, you know, things didn't go so well there because I was at that moment living with my father, and I had other stepbrothers and a stepmother and so forth, grandmother. It was a lot of people in one home that it's like the good times. That's a show, by the way. It was like a lot of people, and it was completely different. Like I had to adjust to the climate. It was hotter. I had to adjust to the fact of like, my whole perspective changes, and that's why I feel like what most people are so uncomfortable about. And it's almost like, again, the title. I titled this the sense. I titled this, the sense of belonging or belonging somewhere. And I learned that everywhere I went or everywhere I travel, I'm always learning about the environment. I'm learning about where I'm at. I'm either researching, because my mind is just like, that's just how it operates, like overpowered mind or analytical about things. Or I just like to learn about something, like open my mind to certain things to where I'm like, okay, let me see where I could, learn about something new and spread a message, or find something that's relatable. And so when I came back from there, like, it was completely different. I had came back, returned, I think this is around, middle school into high school. But the first time I returned, I came to a school, because where my mom lived at that moment, I was going to assume that I was going to go to a school called Monroe at the time. And this was, again, predominantly, melanated people, darker people. And you had some I'll use the term like lighter skinned people that, nationality wise, I want to say like, Mexican, or I don't even think that's a nationality, but Hispanic, basically. So, um, some may even say Mayans or Aztecs. But that's a whole other ball game. But anywho, um, that's when people start to migrate again. Like, I was telling someone that, like, the guy that I met from Mexico City, like I didn't really know anything about Hispanic or Mexican people until, like, I was like around, what is middle school? I don't even see this, how much I didn't really care about school. I think middle school started at what 11, 12, 13, yeah. And yeah, when I used to go to middle school, when after I returned, I just realized I moved around a lot. Oh my gosh. Um, when I went to middle school before I got kicked out and having to go to Alabama, I I remember, like, I can count on my hands how many like Hispanic people that we had, and I never like really seen that many people, because again, I grew up around just like, your family, darker people and so forth. You knew everybody. That's basically what it was. And so, here it is, like, you meeting people, and some of them, they're coming into school, and um they don't know English as well, or they know a little bit. And I learned after that very well. This is shout out to my people that are of that nationality. Like, they clever people, boy. They sometimes, not all of them, they used to act like they didn't know English, but they knew some things. And and sometimes I didn't even know how they used to pass. Like, when I mean by pass, like literally go to the next grade, when everything was so based off English, man. Everything was so based off, like it's wow how we don't even realize, like, a lot of what we've learned from somebody else rather than being taught by people that even look like us, man. And so again, I was telling the guy, like, that's the first time I ever was introduced to people that was of your nationality. And that was like in like early 2000s or whatever. And he was like, whoa. I was like, yeah, I think later 90s, early 2000s. So yeah, early 90s. What am I talking about? So, um, So yeah, that experience in itself changed my whole trajectory on life because, again, you used to go into schools that are darker. And um that's when, again, like growing up in these environments or these demographics, people mindset are completely different to where I am presently, to where how I even got on these topics of feeling like I belong somewhere is that even um having experience of being in a place for like almost, like I say, a few months or whatever, yo, it really is a challenging turning point for me because, again, from what I've experienced from people of lighter shade. And that's why I feel like a lot of people have their programming and even their survival mindset, because we just assume that this is just a melanated or darker people thing that they have towards lighter people. And it's both ways. I'm here to tell you first, it's both ways. I've been and experienced being in places where, I kid you not, you come into certain environments where people are seeing a melanated person for the first time. I'm not kidding. And they don't know how to perceive it. Sometimes they don't know how to perceive it, or based off what they're perceiving or how they will project from their experience, they'll go off what they learned from TV or what they learned from whatever they grew up in. I'm letting y'all know some real raw and authentic shit, bro. I've sat down with people and I learned and I researched about where I've been and where I've lived, and I kid you not, like there's a video that I did previously that I knew that I was gonna make a part two, and this sense of belonging. It's like I asked the Creator, the Most High, why am I in? Why? Like, if you want to evolve, the Most High will put you in places where you're gonna be the most uncomfortable. And can you have faith? Can you still progress? Can you still expand your mindset? Can you still forgive, accept, and move on? I'm talking about being in places where I knowingly know that the Ku Klux Klan have met up like years ago, but at the same moment, it has not changed. Because when I say it has not changed, this is when you're talking about evolution, like seasons change. When I'm talking about evolving, I mean like that is also a part of it too, like metaphysically. But what I mean, like, people haven't changed, I mean like they are not fond of darker people. And I'm not asking for sympathy or want someone to be like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry you got to go through that. No, there are people that are lighter that I've dealt with or talked to recently that was like, oh my gosh, like, really? Because they don't even know sometimes that they're amongst these people who have had their, if you want to call them ancestors or descendants, who have had parts in even killing, murdering, or taking out, people that are darker purposely, intentionally. And this is not a like a new thing. This is you can call it a trend if you want to use that word, but this is the norm in America. For those of you that are in other countries, this not has always been the norm, but this has been the norm for the last couple of 100 years because of the division, because of the delusion people have lived in. Yes, this is I've seen it firsthand. I've had to sit down and talk to elders. Some people who are like, oh my gosh, I walked up to people, they are, what? That little, this is for my darker people that know this. In America where they give you that little smile, I feel like yeah, like they do that smile, but and it immediately goes back to a frown, because that's that. I'm gonna smile just because, but at the same time, I don't really want to fuck with you. I don't really care about you. I don't really want to have nothing to do with you or your people or your kind. But like I said, this is in all cultures, man. This is the self-hatred. And this is the thing I also notice is, like, we don't even realize where we learned this from. Again, we have learned, and shout out to I love watching interviews on people. Like I said, I don't have to support what people are doing and like and accept everything that they're doing. But this goes back to the belonging part and even the demographics. But one thing, like the authenticity of Charleston White, man, like I said, I cannot say like everything that he says that comes out of his mouth that I'm gonna agree with and accept. Like that has nothing to do with me. That's not my calling. That's not my purpose. I'm not here to judge him and so forth. But he had brought up something recently in an interview, like regarding the fact of, again, there are people who say they don't see color, but they do, and that's their programming. But in regards to that, like he had brought up this I'm gonna quote it my own way because I don't want to twist his words, but I'm trying to see how he quoted that or mentioned that statement. It was something along down the lines like I know personally that people have a hatred or are racist purposely towards people that don't look like them, and that's both ways. And that's something he mentioned. And but people have that's a thing where you can have a mutual agreement. You don't have to like people. You really don't have to. And people have their own reasons not to. And that's okay. That's the thing about being at peace and acceptance of who you are. That's the thing about emotional security and being confident in who you are, no matter who likes you or accepts you. And he also mentioned something like who was it, like how he has supporters that were a lighter shade because they have a mutual agreement and a mutual like respect. Like that's my only thing when it comes to me as a man of integrity. It's like just being who I am. It's that you don't have to like me, accept me, embrace me, or even care to accept whatever it is I express. But when it comes to respect and honor, that's one thing I stand on, and integrity. And when I look at going back to the belonging part, this is the thing that I talk about, that I fucking expose about America, that people think is so great about. I had to even talk to my partner about this. I was like the reality is, like, when you look at certain things that are really established here in this country, or certain things, it's like people want to overlook how these things were established. People want to overlook how it came to be. People want to overlook and brush up under the rug, which, again, this is what's being exposed. I call it like healing in reverse, right now. Everything has to be removed and pulled up, from up under the rug. What America in the last couple hundred years has been built upon, it's not anything but it's everything but authenticity. It's everything but love. It's everything but truth. Because why would you be out here trying to take out or remove anything that's not of authenticity and truth? Why is there so much emphasis on, things as such? I be having these uncomfortable conversations with my own partner, again, that don't look like me. Well, I told her, I was like, yeah, they're going to judge you. They're going to say any and everything just because you with a darker man. They're going to say any and everything to me too, whether sometimes they don't like it or not. You get hate from both sides, or from any people, from nobody, no matter who it is. And sometimes it's their own programming. Before they encourage or support, there's immediately, due to their own internal battle, there's a hatred there. They don't, and even with that, it's like, again, from the environments that I've experienced, and the one currently that the divine has me experiencing, has a lot to do with my having an ego death, has a lot to do with that everyone's not the same, but has a lot to do with even exposing the roots of what we see, again, the belonging of how can people feel like a sense of belonging when you're constantly intruding on who they should be, how they should be, telling people as a country, as an environment, that that they're not, that just because of the color, just because they're darker, that they need to go back to a place, just because of who they are and how they do certain things, that they should like not be here, that they should be murdered, they should be treated a certain way. Like, this is the I'm letting y'all know, belonging, feeling accepted and secure, belonging somewhere. Y'all want people to feel like they are and this goes, I gotta drop off something. Let me, like, a sense of belonging, feeling secure. One moment. Okay, I'm back. But that's the thing that I'm getting at. It's like people want to sit here and make it seem like who really feels like they belong in America or even in the world, when you got people trying to tell you who you should be, how you should be, who you should date, how you even should take a shit, what you should eat. I'm talking about, I'm calling out all levels, spiritually too, in the spiritual community. All this, what you should be doing, how you should be doing it, who you should be praying to, who you should be da da da, all these commands and demands and so forth. When the bigger picture of it all, in the realm of things, it's like we're missing the biggest part of it all, is that the oneness in it. Because all of that, all this, the illusion of all this, is that it's the biggest illusion is the separation. We're trying to find, based on what we've been taught and programmed to believe, trying to find bits and pieces where we feel a sense of not belonging somewhere. When you look at a man such as myself, it's like I have to find a way to feel like I belong in a country or an environment where there's nothing that illuminates the fact, or illuminates and encourages men such as myself that are darker to feel safe, to feel accepted, to feel validated, to feel secure, to feel loved, embraced, so forth and so forth. I'm talking about an emotional part, fulfilled. What is there? These are things you have to like really dig deep within yourself, and I talk about it and call it out. This is why I talk about it. Like I said, I talk about it to my partner. I'm like, look, if you think from how the programming has been in America that your tears aren't more important than a darker colored person, woman and or man, like, I'm calling it out. If you assume that when it comes to the judicial system and so forth, that it's going to be more lenient when it comes to someone darker, it was never designed that way. I sit down and have these conversations. I see the panic in people that are lighter in America. You know why? Because of exposure of what has kept their foundations that are fueled off hatred for darker people as well. When I look at the foundations, a lot of it, inequality, a lot of escapism, overshadowing, pushing things up under the rug. Most of your school system are people that are lighter shades. That's one thing Charleston mentioned. He was like, you think these people don't know our struggles? They created it. And the thing is they created it, but at the same time, I always tell people, who do you think helped them create it? That's the part we're missing. Because it's not about just blaming people that are lighter, because it's not all of them. It's also the fact of I always bust people bubbles. I always bust people bubbles, bro. Because y'all want to sit here and don't take in consideration if you believe, like, that's on you. And you know, to each his own, because ignorant is truly bliss. There's no way I'm going to believe, and no way even in my mind that I'm going to believe that people of darker shade, everybody here in America, like, was shipped here. And for someone to teach us that was a part of even mental enslavement, or what I call prisoners of war, spiritual warfare, resources, a sense of belonging. Who really feel like they belong if they've been removed from their original country or place? So a lot of people have to settle in, settlers, migrate. You're gonna call somebody an immigrant when I've been, like, we all have been migrating and trying to find a sense of belonging. But immediately the powers that word want to keep telling y'all that you're this, label you this, you label you all of these things. When we don't even sit down, when we sit here letting people who have no sense of power or common sense tell us who we are, no matter what creed or color, because I'm calling out all world leaders or whatever they, who are they leading? What the fuck are they leading you to? They like, this is the age of Aquarius. This is about the golden age. This is about everything being exposed. All of these countries, all of these people are being exposed for who they are. They can no longer hide it. Because that's the karma. That's the healing in reverse. This is the karma. In order for you to experience Dharma, you have to see the karma, the lesson, the energy that America, the energy that these leaders, so-called world leaders, these energies that people have put out are reversing. The spells, the illusion, all these things are reversing to be exposed for what it is. The energy has to expose itself. From the darkness from which it came, the light exposes it. And who do you think are doing that? We all were a part of it till we have to see it within ourselves. This is why people are panicking. I'm sitting here living in it and seeing. I'm like, wow. The silence is so loud. Like, I'm telling you, I've lived in a community where, and I tell people this, I'm like, yo, going back before I get to the prisoners of war. When you go to the origins of everything, it is darker. This is what people don't know of darker. Like, again, when you learn history, a story that's not our story, his story, blah, blah, blah. That's the spell that has been exposed. That's the illusion. Because y'all been thinking like all of y'all come from this and all that. That's to keep you in victim mentality. That's to keep you in a lower state, to really believe that you just came from that. When you don't even realize some of what's already been exposed and what is going to be exposed is when people of lighter skin nationalities realize they have been in captivity as well and are entering it. They also have been prisoners of war. We all have been prisoners of warfare. When you have people that have been migrating and or being shipped or displaced from their original this, what is it, is that the word that I want to use, diaspora, or you know, continent, country, and so forth, which has already been happening. So no one really, the confusion and the identity crisis, that no one feel like they belong anywhere. How can someone tell someone that never originated from a land that they don't belong here? What a lot of people of lighter shade are not realizing is that a lot of you don't realize a lot of you were shipped here. Your ancestors were shipped here. You're just now establishing after a couple hundred years of certain things. And then you come to the realization a lot of what you established was at the hands of people that were darker, who helped. Because help and support is not the same thing. Who helped you actually create this environment, this society. And this is what's backfiring. This is what's going to bring people together. The hate you put out is the same hate you get in return, and that's what's going to expose the wound. America has a big wound, and the wound is built off self-hatred, of hatred of self. They hate their citizens, their civilians. They hate. It's literally off hate. Their subconsciousness, their fears. I mean, coming into a community where people have never seen someone that looked like me, my stature, it's intimidating to a lot of people. It ain't about being the biggest, it's the confidence of someone that's darker. And the fearlessness that I gotta have to know that people, again, in these communities, knowingly researching and learning that these people have burned crosses. These people have met up purposely in these communities to come against people that look like me. Everybody can't walk this path. But there's also people who have lighter shade who have also been a part of that too. I don't know why the Freedom Riders just came up, but that's another thing you should look into. Is it Freedom Riders? Yeah, Riders. And there were people of different shades. That's stuff that I had to go learn at different libraries, in Ohio, certain things where I seen people that are a lighter shade who help remove and, if you want to say, free, because free and sovereignty is not the fucking same thing. They help free them. And that's what people don't even realize. Prisoners of war. Prisoners of war is a complete difference of being actually a slave to something. You have a prison system. America has the biggest prison system in the world. What the fuck is there to be proud of? You purposely keep your citizens, and most of them are of a darker descent, like literally darker shade, from different hues of darker shade. Let's just put it like that. I've seen it traveling in California in certain places. I've seen it. They got prisons on fucking islands. This is for people that don't know. That's, shout out to my supporters from people that are in different places. What? I love, man, what? I'll be the first to say it. I'll be the first to touch belonging. We all want to be somewhere where we feel like we belong. How can someone say, I feel like I belong somewhere in a country where there is nothing that is empowering people of darker shade? We have to create it. And then even when we create it, or certain things, there's somebody that's darker who comes in, because that's the reality of it, who, due to their own self-hatred and due to their own internal battles, which has happened over time when it comes to chiefs, chiefdoms, and so forth, before you had your kingdoms and so forth, queendoms and all that. Because these are different demographics around the world too. Chiefdoms. Research it. This is what's being restored, balance. This is a country that holds captive the most people in the world, y'all. A country and environment that purposely poison their citizens and people. And I love that people are traveling and moving out of the country and doing because a lot of this is so they can receive the sovereignty for their lineage. Because freedom is not the same. The land of the free. What the fuck is free when nothing here is free? The best thing you can be is a free spirit. You got to know your value and who you are. A sense of belonging. And this is on all levels. Because even people that are lighter, some of them fear the fact of even going into communities where it's darker. That's what they fear. Because they're going to feel like they don't even feel like they belong anymore. Because see, this is how deep the programming is. We have developed so much hatred within humanity that we don't even feel like we belong amongst each other, man. And it ain't even the hope. The only faith that I see when it comes to in the physical aspect is when I'm at a park and I see little kids that don't see color. The ones that haven't been programmed off of it, because there are people out here that do not want their kids to associate. They don't want their daughters dating a darker man. They don't want shit. It go both ways too, because I told my partner about that. My grandmother, that's the first time that's the first time she ever had a child that was a lighter shade. That's his, and that's the shift in our lineage. That's the first time. So for some people, that's gut wrenching for them, because in what they grew up in the 70s, 60s, and 80s, their mindset is still in that, or that brings up their subconscious fears, because they've had to play it safe. And a wise woman told me a safe can be broken into. They have had to play it safe. I had talked to elders firsthand who have told me how they hung people right there in the very, hung people right there in the very city that I grew up in. And I didn't experience it, but to hear it from the mouth of someone that looks like me, a darker elder that's in his 70s, 80s, I'm like, what do you mean they hung people? Who hung people? Right there at the courthouses in Monroe, they hung people. I'm like, why do y'all keep this from people? Because the fear is that, and I always talk about the healing in reverse, is that these things have to be exposed, y'all, to bring healing to people. Because not everyone, the fear is about, again, divine retribution. That's going to be a whole nother fucking episode. There is divine retribution at hand. Like I said, the greatest fear for a lot of people that are of different shades, because it's not everybody, but divine retribution can look different in different people's life. Divine retribution is that karma balancing out to where people who look like you, who say you couldn't be something and wouldn't support you and so forth, yada, yada, yada. But you end up getting that retribution in your life to where you become exactly what they say you couldn't be. And then that's the same thing for America. Their greatest fear, when it comes to where it really originated, is that, and they knew that it would come to this moment, is, the only fucking way for a lot of people, because when I'm sick, I'm gonna break this down to where the only way for a lot of the healing to happen and things to be exposed is to come from the very mouth from where it originated, where the pain originated. That's where accountability comes in. When you look at the minority and majority of the world is darker colored people. So when you look at the origins of the pain that has been caused by it is not related mostly to lighter skinned people. That pain has first, when I look at my life, my pain started first with someone that was darker. When I look at the majority of the world, how everything began, this is just the actuality of things. What most people don't, and I sit back, I said, what? Hold on. I can see why certain people that are lighter have this thing towards darker people. You know why? Because not all of their experiences have been great with darker people before y'all throw this slave shit up. Because again, they were in captivity. They were prisoners of war too. Y'all just been told this delusion and confusion. We don't know all the stories that they went through. Their people were raped too. Yeah. Let's talk about it. Because we all get this story. We have gotten this story like, oh, all our people was on that plane. Let me tell you something. Where I also grew up at, there are pictures. There are things in certain places where right there on that land, there were people that are indigenous, if you want to call them Native Americans and so forth. And there are also people that came from Different countries, if you research this, Camp Sutton, research how people from Germany and a lot of different countries came that are darker. My mother, when I look at matriarchal and patriarchal, this is one thing I started to connect together, and I'm glad it just came up. My father's descendants are from Germany. My father is darker, like literally around the same complexion as me. We're darker. I believe he's kind of darker than my mom. That's his descendants, bro. And sometimes deep down in there, that's his descendants, Germany. I'm like, where's this name come from? My mother's descendants are not only just from here, but her descendants as well are from or Anglo-Saxon. You can look that up. This is from different countries. So that tells y'all right there that where a lot of your descendants and ancestors are not even original. Like a lot of y'all come from so many different things that where you're trying to find a sense of belonging, people, in a place where you're not even originally, your ancestors not even originally from. You're from a place because you were birthed here, but when you go deeper into your patriarch or matriarch, you're not here. So your sense of belonging sometimes you can feel alienated. You can feel alienated. Once I start learning and go deeper into like my ancestry, I start to realize like, hold on, my great grandma, hold on, a lot of these people migrated here of different shades. A lot of these wars and prisoners of war, they were people that were of darker shade against each other. The Confederacy, all of that. These were people fighting over resources, the greed. That's the hand you don't see. The dark hand, the black hand that you don't see. The part of the story that's been left the fuck out. A lot of you lighter skinned people of different nationalities, the reason why you don't feel like you just now become comfortable over a couple hundred years. But also you were taught something from people. You didn't think, do you really just think that you just established this on your own? Come on now. Why would I sit and say I established this on my own? And in reality, how? When I got to look at my backstory, when I got to look at the parts that are not so great, when I got to look at the parts of how even certain surnames and last names came to be, when I got to look at how some people were probably raped, some people probably were forced into captivity, some people, just to protect a name, just to protect the resources. So a sense of belonging, divine retribution has a lot to do with that. The divine is stepping in, divine intervention. Why you met this person? Why you meeting this person from this type of, this country, this certain, because something there you can correlate, or there's something to the depths where you're gonna realize, hold on, well, something there has something we're connecting. So this whole trying to put people in this black box, white box, and all this, I'm staying away from it, because you cannot put everybody there. Everybody didn't come from descendants of slaves. Everybody didn't come from descendants of royalty and so forth. Because a lot of those royal people did not play, they played the cards that they were dealt, but at the same time, they got greedy. They also played a part in keeping people in captivity. This is divine intervention right now that the world has been exposed to. While people were giving so much praise to certain people that were of certain status. It's no difference in celebrities and certain people and all this other shit. When it comes to bloodlines, when it comes to spiritual stuff, on a deeper level, all of that has been exposed. Everything has been, people are being stripped of those things because of their greed, because of their, because of the, trying to keep people in the dark about things. And the only way things can be balanced out spiritually, physically, when it comes to a sense of belonging, is so people can become at peace, because they've been warring with themselves and not realizing why do they feel this sense of, you know, these things going on. It's because you've been given pieces, but you haven't been, you've been fed whole lies and half truths about who it is you are. Even people of lighter shades. Yeah. See, y'all don't realize that it was purposeful for people to teach us until it came to that point where we were going to realize not only who we were, but who you were. And even not only who people were of lighter people, but also who people were of darker, who have put their own people in captivity. And these world leaders know that shit. This is why their countries are not prospering. This is why a lot of their countries are going to be destroyed. A lot of things are going to be destroyed because of how the energy, the karma that they put out, and it's going to return to create dharma. Divine retribution has a lot to do with a reset of things. If you have something that is poison and you want to cure, and you need something like to cure that, you have to find out what it is that is causing the pain and get to the root of it. And that's what's being exposed on all levels, from the communities, from the families, the lineage, all the way up to your politics, universal. It's just what it is. There's no escaping it. So you want to talk about feeling a sense of belonging? We're all trying to find a sense of belonging through all this, what it seemed like a fucking apocalypse. Because this major shift that's going on right now, where people who were once, at a time, who were once enemies are now becoming allies. Where people who did not build friendships are now building them. Where people who wouldn't become in partnerships with people, they would. See, the powers that were did not want this to happen, but the light is present. This is what's happening. This is being restored, y'all. This is balance being restored. Where you have women that are darker now can live amongst women that are lighter. And realizing that's your sister. You can build sisterhood. Same thing with men. Y'all got to realize, when you really sit down and see the underlining of what you and that woman got going on, there's so much you can relate to outside of your skin color. Because sometimes that hate that woman has for you, you'll realize it's a hate that she has for herself. And you're trying to be like her unconsciously, because you're trying to live in a fake world who has tried to persuade you to be like women that don't even look like you. And these women hate themselves. So then you're trying to become and mask yourself. Because that go both ways. It's just as much as darker women want to look a certain way, there are women that are lighter just as much as want to be just like you. It goes both ways. It deep down is a deep insecurity of not being secure within yourselves. That's just what it is. And same thing with men. I see it all the time. The fake image that, again, I said it twice. Like I told my partner, I said, yo, I really see the depths of, even there's no depths to a lot of people. And it's not all, because I got brothers who are lighter shade, who got soul, who deep down I know, like, it's never been an issue, never been no disrespect and so forth. That don't look like me, they're lighter, but at the same moment, it's just a vibe. It's a vibe. But then I see some who they have the money, their cars and all this other stuff, but deep down there's no depth to them. They're disconnected from their emotions. They're disconnected from the reality or the actuality that I'm no different than you. Because at a point in time, you was a little boy. Just because you came in a different avatar, a different skin, doesn't mean that, we didn't both experience pain or neglect or abandonment or something to the depths of that. So as much as you're trying to find a sense of belonging, I'm also trying to find a sense of belonging. At that same moment, it may not look the same, but what you built your identity on has been inauthentic. What I also, because again, from whether you're dark or not, no matter the demographics, you have people who also, through their status, celebrity, and all this other shit, through this fake world, they have built their image off inauthenticity. And now that's been exposed. because they did it for acceptance. They did it for validation. They did it for external things, but there was never no emotional security within themselves. So it get exposed on both parts. When I see men in a lighter shade who, yeah, they may can have more when it comes to money and in certain status and what they're accepting in this society and in this country, who knowingly deep down have built an image, a false identity off of being inauthentic, inauthenticity. Y'all got, hey, this word. I think it's my tooth getting in the way. But again, I see it from all the oneness of all. People hide behind an image no matter what color and creed. But what I see mostly in America when it comes to men that are, if you want to use a term, Caucasian or whatever their nationality is that when I see certain of them in certain, when they get access to certain things that I'm not able to get access to due to what has been built on that structure, I used to be bothered by that. It hurt me. Yeah, it was a wound that was created. But at the same moment, I realized, like, I'd rather do this shit through integrity. So it can't be questioned rather than cut corners, rather than do stuff sneakily, rather than, throw stones and hide my hands and then sit there and boast and brag just because someone's in a different position, just because they have more money and so forth. But deep down, I know that they're insecure. Their insecurities are loud. Their silence is loud because they're still questioning the fact of how could I still be who I am, even being darker, when they knowingly know what's going on in the world. When some people really sit back, knowingly see how things are portrayed on the TV about men that look like me. And their greatest fear sometimes is for their daughters to end up with a man that looks like me, that is confident, that is secure emotionally, that is fulfilled in what he's doing, no matter, the status or how much money that I have. I can see past it. And this is the thing that I can call out. Because again, this is the false identities that when I, again, have been in communities or been in places where people can have the biggest house. They can have all these things. There's no judgment. But I can really, as an empath or, just gradually from my own internal growth, from my own emotional security and emotional intelligence, I can see people hide behind those very things. And that's what they believe that's going to keep a woman, keep their family afloat and so forth. And really it's exposing themselves because they have no depth to them. So of course they can hide behind that. They can pretend for so long. You can only pretend but for so long. And this is what America is doing. All this shit around the world, you can only pretend but for so long, people. Because then that's when that inauthenticity, you don't even feel like you belong nowhere. People starting to lose their mind now because they have an identity crisis. They don't even feel like they belong nowhere anymore. Because all the things that they kept going for so long and so forth, it's like, it's you that don't belong here. You've been trying to convince me because if I don't look a certain way, if I don't have a certain status, a certain bracket, live a certain way, be in this community, go to this school, all this bullshit, all this shit that don't even make sense. It makes sense to them, but it's senseless. It's literally childish and ignorant. So with that, it's like, while you hide behind your nicks and nannies, there's still a deep insecurity that you have towards, again, from the image that America has betrayed. There's still a deep insecurity that you have within yourself that you hate about someone just because they realize that it's in them and not on them. And when I say on me, it don't matter the tattoos, the avatar, the color, none of that shit. It's in me. And that right there, knowing that it's in me, is my sense of belonging. So no matter where I'm at, I can adapt. No matter who I'm around, my energy is going to be magnetic because that's just what it is. So I'm going to leave y'all with that. Your sense of belonging is knowing that you belong exactly where you are within yourself. your emotional security, you validating yourself, you accepting who you are, you believing, you embracing who you are first. And when you look at the foundations of this world, and when you look at the foundations of America and the karma that's coming, it's because the very thing is the opposite of that. That's what's coming. You want to know what's coming? That's divine retribution. Everything is being restored to where it rightfully was. And that's a sense of belonging within self, a sense of self. Everything America throughout these past 100 years and so forth has kept people away from, literally, they were more focused on the belongings, like you know how you go somewhere, like take your belongings. They were more focused on painting that image of, obtaining their belongings, rather than belonging within themselves, rather than being secure within themselves. So ponder on that. Drops mic. Peace and blessing. Shalom.